Welcome to Stock Time to Improv. I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff, and I want startups to be wildly successful. One of the things a lot of startups need is a custom AI or an app. My guest today is Isaac Musselwhite from Bright Wings, and we're going to talk about what benefits there are in hiring a developer. Thanks for coming, Isaac.
Yeah, no problem. Nice to be here.
So, you are a developer, correct?
Yes.
And one of the best things about you is that you speak non-developer.
I think so, yeah. I want to at least if I'm not doing great at it.
Okay. So why should a startup think about hiring a developer?
Startups should think about hiring a developer when they are trying to get their idea off the ground. So a lot of non-technical founders um, have a vision, but don't necessarily translate that layer between themselves, the vision, and a developer. And so often they'll come maybe a little unprepared, or they don't have kind of clarity when they're building. So um, they either get overcharged or kind of the wrong thing gets built or stalled completely. And so I help non-technical founders get kind of developer ready. So when they finally hire someone, they're not burning money or on guesswork.
And it's not so much what you want the app or the AI to do, it's what's your big goal? What problem are you solving? Because what you think something may need to do may not quite be what it can do or what it should be doing, right?
What I found, at least in my adventures here, is non-technical founders will use AI to get pretty far, actually. And in fact, they can get really far on their product, and it really does cut down sort of the gap between them and what a developer could do. But also because of that, a lot of layers get built, a lot of things get added that may not necessarily work. And so that's why you would hire a developer.
Well, I'm a big fan of do it right the first time so you don't have to fix it later.
Right. That is
And
definitely.
it's going to cost you time and effort and money. So hiring a developer can be extraordinarily cost effective, particularly now when AI is big and not everybody's an expert, right?
Even with AI, I think there's still a very big gap between how a developer presents a problem versus how a founder is going to present the same problem.
So what kind of questions should a founder ask when they're looking to hire a developer?
I put together about 10 questions that a founder should be able to answer before they walk up to a developer into a conversation with a developer. Things like, what does your product actually do? In one sentence from a user's perspective. So, not about your vision deck or your slide deck, but what can someone do on day one with your product? Another question may be, what are 3 to 5 MVP features and which ones aren't MVP? So, every founder thinks that everything is essential, but a developer needs a short list of exactly what they need and not a wish list. I'm making this available on my website, which is brightwings.io, but a few others that kind of stand out. How will you know if this is working? So, what metrics do you use that tell you the MVP succeeded? And if you can't answer that, neither can a developer. How are you going to communicate with your developer day to day? If there's no system for feedback, you miss deadlines, scope creep begins to happen, or in very bad kind of Slack relationships. So that's another thing that you definitely be able to answer for yourself as you approach a developer.
And when you're talking to a developer, it's also about chemistry. It's about you need to be able to actually understand what they're talking to you about and not feel uncomfortable saying, what does that mean?
Chemistry is a huge thing. That's, I think, one of the things that makes me a little different than just most of, I mean, yeah, developers are developers. Everybody has their own cup of tea. I try to be casual and fun and interesting because it can be, scary for someone to, or two people to meet where, one's going to have a specific take on a question, or just can go take this conversation sideways just in technical jargon. And so it is really important that you can get along and really just like casually talk about a problem that you're trying to solve, or grab coffee and discuss like things that are going on in your world or your day to day, so that it's easier, especially in a world where you're working remotely. It's easier to kind of begin to trust each other on what it is that you're building together.
It also occurs to me that a developer is in a great position to help you validate the idea, to make sure that somebody hasn't been working on this already.
Yes. Iterating on a problem is definitely something that um, people bring to the table, so they already know like what tools are out there that may already be doing this, or even just if the problem has been attempted or is being solved in another way. Usually a developer is able to speak to that.
And developers know shortcuts
Yeah.
better than AI in terms of coding, right?
Yes, AI definitely is a huge solve for a lot of people, right? So it gets you very far quickly without having to know much. However, like you said, there are different ways to do the same thing. So a lot of times a developer who has experience, has a 10, 15 years into the business or whatever, they're going to know how to get there faster. And often software developers really are approving and reading code that AI has built, and not necessarily using AI to build. It's a different lens actually. They're the ones that are kind of making sure your application works properly, making sure you have the right APIs talking to the front end and the back end. So there are lots of ways the developer makes that easier.
Right. So make sure that you talk to a developer if you don't actually hire one, understand you get what you pay for,
Yep.
and that investing money in an expert is going to save you money and headaches in the long run.
Yes, that's the story I'm hearing. As I've talked to non, non-technical founders, they're running into problems where they lose track of their developer. Maybe they built out a solution for them, but it ends up, they need to maybe recreate some of it or make a new feature, but they've lost track of that developer. They'll go down a longer road where they're hiring a dev company and still basically overpaying or spending a lot of cash to get a product in place. So, um, you know, we want to help through getting a founder started with the right tools, with the right setup, having a blueprint, having, just like you would have a blueprint to build a house, we provide a blueprint to build your application. And so having that, handing that off to them, giving them the roadmap so that they can keep working on their own. Maybe it's just a few things here and there that they can fix, or maybe it's getting advice from us along the way. And so having us troubleshoot things, debug things, and then come to the table with kind of a full, plate of ideas and of things we've troubleshot, and yeah, just getting them going in the right way.
Great. And thank you so much, Isaac Musselwhite from Bright Wings. We'll put information into comments so people can get more information about you and how to hire a developer. And
Awesome.
I'm Mary Scott with Business Riff. I want startups to be wildly successful. And one of the best things you can do to accomplish that is book a call with me at businessriff.com. And join us again next time for Stuck, Time to Improv.